Hey everyone, welcome to season 12 of the Tension Podcast. We are a show that acknowledges most of life and faith is lived in the tension between the two extremes. Each week we look at what many of us were taught growing up in evangelical churches. We weigh it against what our current culture is saying, and we try to find what Jesus has for us in the tension between the two. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Curl, and we're joined as always by our co-host, Mr. Eric Williams. Eric, go ahead and say hey to the people.
I don't even know what to say. I don't know. There's no hey to be had. I have no idea.
The reason Eric's saying that, I think, we've told you all season that this season's a little more about honest conversations and less about teaching, and that we've been off notes more than normal. I texted him at 5:30 last night and told him I had just realized I forgot to write this week's episode. I've been thinking about it. I just hadn't put it on paper. And so I typically write the show on Monday. We record on Friday. We have time to think through the notes, blah, blah, blah. The joke's always been that Eric doesn't read the notes, but this week, Eric literally could not read the notes because I didn't finish them till 12 minutes ago.
Yep. So this is great. Sight unseen. This is good. Let's just go. I don't even know what the topic is.
So, yeah, I think that's a little hyperbole. You do know the topic, but do you remember us talking about it last week is a different story. So this week we are talking about how American individualism is a cancer inside the church.
Oh, yeah,
but before we get to that topic, I do have to remind you that at the end of this season, in 2 weeks from today, we will be releasing our 100th episode. And for that episode, we want to celebrate the impacts this show has had on you and on others. To do that, we want to share your stories straight from you. We don't want to have to make up our own stories or relay things we've heard. We want to hear them from you. So we need you to send in those stories. Please send them in by Thursday, March 20th. You have 3 ways you can do that. You can write up a story and send it in to hello@tensionpodcast.com. You can send an audio message to hello@tensionpodcast.com or to me on Instagram at Jonathan_Caron, or you can send a video message on Instagram or email those to us as well. In your message, we'd just love to hear about how an episode made you think about something in a new way, how it encouraged you, and how it made you feel like you weren't alone, or maybe even how it helped you have conversations with others about hard topics. Whatever it is, we want to celebrate with you sharing your stories so it's not just a big self-involved thing about us. Cool. That's out of the way.
Great.
Individualism. Let's talk about it because if you've been a part of the show for a while, you've heard a little bit of my spiel about collectivism versus individualism. We did a whole episode about it, I think like 2 years ago at this point. But I am becoming more and more convinced that American individualism is a cancer inside the American church. And the reason I call it a cancer is because cancers usually grow inside you without you noticing they're there. And they often you don't even realize they exist until they become a major issue and start impacting other things. And that's where I think we're at with the American individualism inside the church. And when I say individualism, Eric, I'm going to put you on the spot because we didn't do this beforehand, but I want to define that so that we know what we're talking about. And the way I would define it is individualism is thinking of yourself and your family first, foremost, and above anyone else. And I think in this context, we have to include without consideration for how it impacts others as well when we talk about with the church. So thinking about yourself and your family above anyone else without making any consideration for how that impacts other people. How does that definition sit with you?
Yeah, I think it's good. And also I think, you're starting to see the rise of individualism in practice. And then literally like this year with, as much as we don't want to get too political here this season, I will. Now that politics has crashed into faith in a way that's undeniable. I mean, with the
it's inseparable in some places.
Yeah, well, and I mean the fact that like it's now. What I mean is more so the the prayer service before the inauguration caused all kinds of controversy because the bishop asked the incoming
for mercy.
Yeah, for mercy, and it's like, and then JD Vance comes out, who he is said he's a devout Catholic, and he starts actually saying these things that individualism had been in practice, but now there's almost like a policy coming out where it's like, no, 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 you're actually supposed to love your neighbor, meaning your like this concentric circle of neighbors. You need to love your family first, and then you're the people around you, and blah blah blah. Like that's who your neighbor is, and so that you start to hear the gospel being married to this individualism, essentially your definition, like what's most important, me, and then the people right around me, and then also like I get to prioritize who my neighbor is, as opposed to Jesus in the gospels in the parable saying, oh, who's your neighbor? And he goes, oh yeah, the person you hate the most, that's your neighbor, right? Like the biggest a-hole in your life, that's your neighbor. The person that you want to tear down all the time, that's your neighbor. The person that needs you the most, that's your neighbor. Like, oh crap. So that's where it's like it's in the public now it's like being spoken about, because it's not just actions where people haven't really talked about it. Now on a public stage, it's almost unavoidable at this point.
And so I would argue I know saying it's a cancer inside the church is a little bit clickbaity, but I would argue we're at the point now where it's like the tumor you can see the tumor.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh crap, like if we don't deal with this tumor, we're going to die.
Right.
And we did a whole season on cultural Christianity killing the church, but I think so much of it at the core inside level is this cancer of individualism.
Because it's cultural. I think that I agree. I think that you have individualism. That is what culture is individualism. So cultural Christianity, if you're to like etymologically break it down, is like individualistic Christianity.
Yeah. And when you look back at our country's past, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons we got here today, how individualism has risen within our ranks. I mean, you can trace it back. If you want to take the political route, you can trace it back to Reaganomics in the 80s and many of the policies that came from that 80 to 88 range, or 81 to 88 range, excuse me. If you want to look at culturally, as technology has changed, we have been less outdoors. We've been less with our neighbor. We've been more, you've heard the analogy, we come home, close our garage and stay inside. We're not a front porch society anymore.
Right.
We aren't some of you know this, but I'm hosting a podcast called Healthy Sports Parents right now. And one of the conversations that always comes up is travel ball versus recreation leagues. And it used to be that representing your town at the recreation level, or even representing your high school, was the highest honor of the youth sports journey. To make the varsity baseball team was a giant deal in past generations. And now it's like, oh, I've got a travel ball team. That's a bigger deal than high school. I just play high school to stay in shape for that. And so it's this individualistic idea that has infiltrated so much of our culture. And then when you add the political behemoth of what politics has become today, we are at the point in our culture, and this is inside the church and out of the church, where a significant portion of our community, of our, let's say people, a significant portion of people equate this collectivist community idea with socialism or communism. Right. They equate caring for the community and thinking about how your individual decisions impact those around you with an authoritarian government style where people can't own their own property. Like the way we have equated these two things, like they would literally call what was happening in Acts 2, which was the church choosing as the people of Jesus to sell their stuff, come together and support each other, not government forcing it, but people choosing it for the benefit of each other.
Right.
They would call that socialism or communism, even though it had nothing to do with the government.
Right.
Because we have this culture that has been created where me first, what I think matters, and like screw everyone else. If it's not good for me, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought that up because it is definitely that sense of like Acts 2 was not forced, was not government mandated. It is not a government socialism or communism or anything else like that. It's to the the equate of like you have somebody over for dinner and you just pay for dinner. Like I'm using my resources and I'm sharing it with you. Or a potluck. Nobody would say a church potluck is socialism, but it is. But that's everybody brings together
But it's
something.
collectivist.
Yeah,
It's
collectivist. So it's
but
a
when you go to a church potluck, you're thinking, hey, I know that Tina's kid has a severe nut allergy. So I'm going to make sure my dish that I bring either doesn't have nuts, or I'm going to make a note of it so that she knows, so that her family is not impacted. I'm
right.
going to think of someone else higher than myself, or at least equal to myself
Yeah.
when I do this. I'm not just going to say, you know what? I like brownies with walnuts, so I'm going to put walnuts on it, screw everybody else. And if the kid goes into anaphylactic shock, it's his fault. He should have known better.
Yeah, exactly. And like the even to the point of like if you back it up from that point, if you're not thinking that way, we just had the Super Bowl not too long ago as we're recording this. And it's like if you go to a Super Bowl party and somebody says, "Hey, here's what we're bringing," and everybody can kind of like chime in on what you're bringing, you notice for the most part, everybody's like kind of making sure that you have a well rounded meal. It's not like everybody's like, well, I'll bring napkins. I'll bring napkins. I'll bring napkins. I'm going to bring napkins. Oh, by the way, I'm going to bring napkins. What do we need? I'm going to bring napkins. And then you got a freaking Super Bowl party of nothing but napkins. It's like, no, that doesn't happen because at some base level, us as human beings, we understand that collectivist approach. And so I think that that's really the key is like thinking through the difference is yeah, I don't want socialism either. I want a spot where we are choosing to be collectivist, not being forced to be anything else. Because even from a theological standpoint, that would be legalism, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that that's what we want either. Because you cannot ever legislate someone's morality or someone's heart. And so you cannot never legislate somebody to be or make an edict from a church body to say, I command you as the church to do this. And it's like, well,
That's a cult.
yeah, the only place you can that Jesus is really the only one that can do that. Other than that, like
Yeah.
it's not working out. So, you know,
It should be out of the outflow of our heart, because of our love and care of others, inspired by the life of Jesus and the work that he has done for us, that we set aside our individualistic desires for the sake of the whole. Like I've made the joke before. It's like, I don't necessarily want to be coaching soccer this spring. And the better example is last spring. Last spring, I had baseball season, which we had a lot of home games. I'm the PA announcer for our high school baseball team, for those that don't know. So I knew I would be out. Most of our games are on Tuesdays and Fridays. Our soccer league here in town traditionally had done soccer practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I knew I'd have to miss half the practices on Tuesdays. But when the season was about to start, we had 45 kids in my son's division. We had 2 people signed up to coach, and they play 7-on-7. So you were going to have 22 kids on a team when only 7 of them could play at a time. And I looked at it, I was like, you know what? I've been given the ability to coach kids. I understand sports, I understand kids. This is going to be really inconvenient, and I'm going to have to do some things that are not ideal. But for the sake of the kids in my community, because they matter just as much as my comfort does, I'm going to step up to coach and I'm going to help out. And so I gathered 2 parents who had never coached before, but were willing to step up and help when I couldn't be there. And we coached one of the teams. And thankfully, we found one other coach, and we still had 12 on a team because we couldn't find that 5th coach.
yep.
5 teams of 9 would have been ideal, but we had a team of 12, and we made it work, all because we looked at the big picture and said, someone other than us needs us to be uncomfortable and needs us to commit to something that is a little inconvenient, but is good for them. And I don't say that to toot my own horn, but if I wasn't following Jesus, I don't know that I would have said that, if I would have said okay to that. But it's because the way my heart has been transformed, because I am a selfish prick on my own. I've said that this season. Like, that is just by nature, that is what I am. But it's through the work of the Holy Spirit and the reimagining of my heart and my brain, the transformation, that I'm like, you know what? Those one another's matter.
Yep.
And those kids matter. So I'm going to go do it. And what has happened in our culture is, you know what, that's going to be inconvenient for me, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on my mental health. I'm going to focus on, and I'm not degrading taking a break from things for your mental health at times, but we have almost weaponized some of these truths about our own personal health in ways to justify being able to be selfish little pricks instead of thinking of others as equals or as more important than ourselves.
But and I want to draw a clear distinction, because I think, like, to me it's clear, because, and I know you're in the same boat. Like, I've been flying, been an air traveler for a long time, right? So, like, every single time you get on the plane, one of the things they do in the emergency little briefing meeting thing is they talk about the oxygen mask. And the thing they always talk about is put the oxygen mask on yourself before helping others around you. And that is the mantra of the self-help and mental health. It's like, if I'm not connected to the source of oxygen, I can't help other people. But that doesn't mean that I just need to, like, put all the masks on myself. So yeah, for sure. Like, and
I'm going to watch everybody else go down, but
right,
because it's going to be hard for me, I'm not going to like that mask. I'm so focused on keeping that mask on me,
right,
that I'm not even going to reach over and help someone else out.
So I think that that's the thing, is like having the maturity to realize, okay, I'm in a position where I'm receiving the oxygen that I need to be helpful. Now I can go out. But yeah, of course, like, if you run out of oxygen, if you run out of the thing that you need to be able to help other people, like in your situation,
there are seasons for this.
Yeah, like,
right?
in your situation, if it's like let's say your wife is sick, and has some sort of debilitating illness, and now it's like, well, no, I shouldn't be doing baseball plus soccer plus this plus
right.
Those sorts of things. It's like, yeah, of course, that there are more.
But the beauty of that, Eric, is if we're doing this right, if the American church or the church in general has this one another attitude, then when a family member gets sick and I have to pull away, there's someone else that's thinking about us just as much as we were thinking about them. So they're going to step up and fill the void.
Yep.
But what has happened is it's been this exponential, the problem has been exponentially grown, because when I think about just myself, and then Eric thinks about just himself, and then Yuhan, I'm going to shout him out, thinks just about himself, and Vicky thinks about herself. I'm thinking about all these different people we know listen to the show. When all of us start thinking about ourselves without anyone else, then it's a cascading result of, well, where's the help when I need it?
Right.
And so if no one's there to help me when I need it, why am I going to help them?
Right.
And so this spiral, it's almost like a snowball. I keep pulling metaphors here, but it's a snowball. And as one person gets more individualistic, it causes more people to get more individualistic. So even while we are trying to run out this American individualism, it has collectivist impacts because it's impacting the whole.
Right. Yeah. And I think I like that we're bringing it back to American individualism. And I don't know if it's in the notes, because, again, I didn't read it, but maybe taking a brief step back. I know you mentioned a little bit with Reagan, but if we think about how we got here, the Protestant Reformation was great. But I think all of us, most of us listening would say we are here because of the Protestant Reformation. We have
if you don't realize that you are.
Yeah, even if you don't realize it, there's a lot to your own faith that happens. Okay, whether or not Martin Luther was a great guy, we can discuss that later. But the bottom line is that opened up Christianity to being more of an individualistic faith, because there was a lot of like, okay, you need to make your faith your own. You need to emphasize your personal faith. But I think that was the door that opened to this hyper individualism that we see today. Sure, was that it at the time? No, but then you mix it with this very American thought.
Hang on.
Go
Let
ahead.
me interrupt you real quick.
Sure.
The other piece of church history you have to realize is I'm blanking on the name right now, and someone's going to say it in a comment, and it's going to make me feel so stupid. Well, I can't remember the name, but like when the pastorate got decentralized to where like the Baptist blow up of like anyone can start a church.
Sure.
Anyone can be a pastor. They just need to be affirmed by a church that was sending them.
Yep.
As opposed to where if you look at the Presbyterian faith and some of the more mainline denominations, you have to go to seminary. You have to go through a much more organized structural process as opposed to, you know what, I feel like Jesus is calling me to be a pastor. So as long as you don't even have to have it anymore, but I'm going to go start my own church.
Sure.
Like, I'm going to get 2 guys to be an elder and we're going to start our own church. And part of that, like that's how the Baptist church expanded so fast, because it was decentralized in a way that you didn't have to go through one overarching organization. And there are many good things about that. So please don't hear me as saying like that is inherently bad, that we have allowed the process to start communities of faith to be easier. Like I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, just like when we were Unlearning Youth Group, good intentions often have bad results that we don't realize at the time. And I think the Protestant Reformation, the word I'm blanking on right now, it's going to bug me. Like all of that gets us to this place that Eric, you were about to go into as well.
Well, yeah. Well, I want to mention one because I like what you said there too. Because I think then you see the rise of the celebrity pastor, right? We've talked about this in various episodes, and I mean, especially when you talk about faiths in different demographics and things like that, where it's like I have to trust almost what you would consider edging on a cult leader, right? There's this celebrity pastor, this individual that has an anointing, that is gathering a following. That also contributes to individualism. Why? Because churches will then be built around a personality rather than a community. There's one person leading this flock. I am the shepherd leading the sheep. And then everybody has to, like, we start to, in our own lives, go, well, I'm the shepherd of my own flock. I'm the shepherd of my own life, and that sort of thing. Instead of, what other faith denominations have, where they might have an overseer or something like that. But, there are times where, like, I remember in the Methodist faith, like the bishop for the district would be voted on by the other churches and would rotate. It wasn't a move up in a hierarchy. It was like, oh, this year, this 4 years, it's my turn to be the bishop. And then after that, I'm going to go back to just being a pastor, or whatever you want to call it, right? And then somebody else gets to lead. But it's not a stair step moving up in this hierarchy. So you've got that in the church world. Then, which I know we have listeners from all across the world, but this starts as a very American idea because of this like rugged individualism, manifest destiny, but more so this self-made man myth, which, I can't remember what episode we talked about this, but I know that we've had episodes on this too. But like American culture loves this idea of the self-made man, the idea that success is like all personal and nobody needs help. But in reality, no one is self-made. And look, I'm a small business owner. I come from a family of small business owners, right? Like my grandpa was the first of his family to be born in the United States. So very close to immigrant status here. I don't claim to be like anybody, but it's like the reality is nobody in America is self-made. People are reliant on a lot of things that we have collectively: roads, teachers, businesses, communities, customers. The fact that other people are around is what I don't have a business. You don't have a business unless you have someone else that needs a business, right? We exchange money, but the fact that actually happens is because we have a collective need and collective skills. So even if you don't acknowledge it, everyone needs somebody. And the same is true spiritually, because faith is meant to be formed in this community. But American Christianity, we tend to teach it like a solo idea, because our breeding for our nationalistic culture says I can pull myself up by the bootstraps. I need to be a prepper and have my own, supplies with my guns and my, 40 acres and everything else like that. And it's like, okay, now when you start to see some of these variables start to mix, it creates this soup of this individualistic idea that's now poisoning the rest of the church and the way we see things.
And I think a big part of this that we also have to mention is even the group of people who acknowledge this is true, the you, the me, the people on who have agreed on this idea, those of you listening who have agreed on that. There is also a lot of individualistic NIMBYism when it comes to this topic. And for those that don't know what NIMBY is, not in my backyard. It's basically saying, like, I see the issues with individualism and I acknowledge the solution, but I don't want to be an active part of the solution because it inconveniences my family. And I will be the first to admit I am guilty of that at times. There are parts of me where I'm like, yeah, like I'm all for collectivist idea. Let's look at the community. Let's do what's needed. But there are times that it's like, you know what? I see that's the solution, and I know they could use me, but I can't commit to that thing too.
I
And
don't want to
some
be
of
a
it, Eric, like,
sanctuary city, right? It's like, I don't want to be
yeah,
a sanctuary city. I don't want that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. All right.
it's like I know. I don't want to get too political. It's like I know we need low cost housing,
I
but
don't
I
want it
don't
in
want
my
it
neighborhood.
next door.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will be honest about that because I think we need the honesty. But even when it comes to, like, got an email yesterday from kids ministry at church. We're adding a third service for Easter this year. And she's like, hey, we need 25 extra volunteers for that service. Are you available? I'm like,
Nope. I mean, darn it.
I have the easiest job in kids ministry. I welcome people. I check in people, but that's another hour and a half of my day that day. And so,
Right.
like, if I was really thinking about this as the collective whole, I would have signed up right away and said, yep, like, what's an hour and a half of my day to say hello to some people on the day we celebrate Jesus' resurrection? Like, I probably would have, like, I don't want to say should have because there's some shame in should have, but I admit my first thought was, how does that impact me and my family and what we're doing?
Yeah.
It wasn't the community, the community I have committed to, that I have said I am a family member of. I'm not going to consider their needs until I consider mine first.
Yep. How much
I'm
longer is
guilty
that
of
going to
it.
push back my ability to get to that ham and that casserole, baby?
Yeah, we don't even do that, but it's like, how much longer is it going to get to my nap?
My
Because
nap.
we're going to have soccer the day before,
Yeah.
and we're going to have, like, I've got baseball that week. It's like Sunday afternoon, like, that's an easy afternoon for me, like, to just lay around and
Yep.
not do anything, and to be
Well,
out for
let me
another hour and a half. Like,
let me ask you this, because I don't know if you're going here or not, but like the NIMBYism, not in my backyard, of like, I don't want to do. I think there's a cousin or an other side of that coin that is almost like, well, you could trust me with it, right? Like, oh, I don't have a problem. Like, oh, I don't think anybody else should have guns, but I'm okay with having guns, right? Or I don't think anybody else should have this, but I'm okay having this. So this little bit of like an individualistic exception too, that I think creeps in as well, where it's like, it's okay for me. It's not okay for thee, but it's okay for me. It's like,
yeah,
I'm okay to do this. I can skip out on the third service because I give X, Y, or Z, or because we're so busy, or like you said, we're gonna have soccer the night before, so it's
we
gonna be okay for me to
justify
skip
it.
out. Go ahead. What?
We justify that it's okay for us without realizing that everyone else is justifying it because it's okay for them
Right.
too.
Right.
And
I
that's how
can
we get to
handle
this
it.
place where it's like, we're going to be scrambling the week before church. Hopefully not, but like, they're going to come to us on Thursday. Hey, we don't have anybody. Can you do this? I mean, at that point, okay, I guess if they really need me, I'll do it, as
Right.
opposed to, yeah, I mean, if I'm in town, let's do it.
Right.
But, and that's one low cost example of the way, like, we have this acknowledgement that there's an issue, but we're not going to get involved to do it. One of the things I got invited to this week, some of you know, some of you don't. I ran for city council in my town at this point 4 years ago. Came in fourth in a 5-person race, so I like to claim that fame. but I was recently
Top
asked to
five,
be part of
baby. You were top five. That's okay.
a I was recently asked to be part of a committee to help our downtown revitalization area. Like they they came, leaders in the town came to me and said, "Hey, you would be a good person for this." And my first answer was not yes, absolutely. My first answer was, "What's the commitment?" And once you can,
I felt, listen, we're buds, and I think highly of you, but I'll have to admit that my sin nature said your first reaction was, go F yourself. We think you'd be perfect for this. And my first reaction was, go F yourself, buddy. Okay. Because that would have been my first reaction. Anyway,
but
sorry. Go ahead.
it was, what's the commitment? And then I'll see if I can do it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like I was looking for an excuse to get out of it.
Yes.
Before even trying to see if it was possible. Like in my brain, it was, all right, well, I got all this other stuff going on. Like, not I'm going to try to make it work. It was, I'm going to try to get out of it.
So
even though I agree.
So it's a default selfishness is kind of what you're saying. It's like my default answer
to the
is going
point
to be
that
no.
The text message, I'm gonna read you the text message I sent back.
Okay. All right. I wish I could see the drafts because I'm sure go F yourself would be in there somewhere.
Well, I was pooping when I got the text. And
all right.
Once you know the commitment, I'm all for listening and seeing if it makes sense with our schedule. And if I can't commit, I'll always be willing to give input if someone has a question.
That's a no.
So even in that, I'm setting myself up. I didn't realize I did this till later.
Yeah.
But I'm setting myself up as this hero of like, even if I can't do it, I'm still here for a question if you need it.
That's right.
Like, as opposed to like, all right, I'm being asked to serve.
If you need Jonathan to come down from on high to deliver his wealth of knowledge and wisdom, perhaps, maybe, Portel, I can put it into my schedule, but we will have to see. I'm always available to mingle with the commoners. Was that what was going through your mind as you were pooping?
No, but that's what I did. Like that's the message that when like I didn't even realize I was doing that. This individualistic idea is so ingrained in us that instead of saying, "Hey, the leaders of my town are asking me to serve our community. Let me see if I can make this work."
Yeah.
My initial individualistic thought was, how much is this going to inconvenience me before I say yes?
My initial thought is my schedule is too important. Like, honestly, that's what it is. And again, caveat, because I've been there, because I've counseled, counseled is the wrong word. I guess counseled in the lowercase c, counseled friends who have been there where you are, Enneagram 2, you are a servant minded person and you just can't say no to anything. And you say yes to everything, and you burn yourself out because you don't know how to establish healthy boundaries in your life. And I don't think that's what we're talking about. Right. So like, yeah, of course. You do there again, oxygen mask, that you do need to have boundaries around your schedule and what's important, but not to the point where it is becoming selfish and exclusionary of other people. Because I also know the people that are possibly some of the most annoying people in the world that you ask them to do anything. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm really in a busy season right now. I just got to really protect my schedule and I got to protect this. I'm like, okay, bro, like you're not that important. Like when you hear it from somebody else, you're like, you are not that important. But then when I say it, it's kind of like that, like it's okay for me, but not okay for thee. It's like, I can say my schedule's really important. But when I hear you say it, I go, okay, whatever, bud. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your schedule's super important. Got to get that nap in on Sunday afternoon. Right.
So I think the difference would be, are you looking to serve others and make your community better first? And then if you can't because something comes up, like we all understand.
Yeah.
Or are you looking to get out of it unless you don't have a good enough excuse?
Yeah.
And then
is it
if you don't have a good enough excuse?
I'll say this. I mean, as a I was cross country coach, I'm running, things like that. I'm also, a fitness coach as well. So like there's a difference between pacing yourself, right, and being lazy. So if you're going to run a mile, and let's say you have a sub 5 minute mile, I mean, that's an all out sub 5 minute mile. You still can't sprint that mile the same way you would 100 meters, in the same way as a marathon. Like, there are some freaks out there that can, but like your longest running time is most always going to be shorter per mile than your shortest, right? Same thing with any other kind of workouts. It's like, if you need to pace yourself and go, all right, my goal is to be servant minded and I have a marathon of service, then yes, maybe I need to reduce my current mile pace by a little bit. So this week, maybe I need to dial back because I know long term, I've got 26.2 more of these bad boys, or 25.2 more of these bad boys to go. That's good. But if you're like, I don't know, I'm just kind of, I don't know, I don't want to get sweaty. That's different, right?
Well, it's like this spring. Once we get to mid-March, from mid-March to mid-May, I am out 4 nights a week every week. I've got my son's soccer practice 2 nights a week, my daughter's soccer practice once a week, and at least one baseball game every week. For me as an extrovert who works from home, that's actually like somewhat exciting to be out that much. But I also know for our family, to do that long-term month after month after month would be detrimental to our family.
Right.
So like I'm serving my community in the coaching, in the PA stuff, like all that. I'm serving them for a sprint.
Yep.
But I know I couldn't do 4 nights a week for 6 months.
Yeah.
I can do it for 2 months and then maybe again 4 months later for 2 more months. And so I hope that the people listening to this can be smart enough and nuanced enough to hear what we're saying, and that like there is a balance to caring about the community and taking care of yourself.
Yep.
There is a tension. That's almost why we're talking about that on a podcast named Tension.
Almost.
So we have to acknowledge that like unadulterated individualism is not it.
Sure.
At the same time, complete collectivism where you're shamed for doing anything for yourself, that's not it either.
Sure.
And we have to live in the tension between the two. And what's happening in America right now is individualism is the cancer running through our body that is out of control. It is multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. And it's not going to stop unless we do the treatment for it, unless we dig it out with surgery, unless we hit it with some intense radiation and then follow up with like actual chemotherapy that will knock it out. Like it's not going to, if we let it keep going the way it is right now, it's going to kill us. And Eric, we've mentioned on this episode, we've lost parents recently. Both of my parents died from cancer, and I remember how ugly it was at the end.
Yep.
I know you remember that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I foresee in the future of the American church. And I'm afraid we're living in it right now.
Yeah. And to yes and that, to make it even worse, is like, it almost seems in some ways obviously the first step is acknowledging it. I think in some ways it's like, oh, we've acknowledged some of it, but we've almost went and go, oh, the tumor I've got right here. No, that's actually a good thing. No, that's really a good thing. Like, cause it's, I don't know what I don't have a funny.
What you don't realize is that 600 years ago, having a big, massive tumor on your neck was actually considered a sign of wealth and, prestige from the cultures back then. So the fact that we have let this grow back is actually showing that we are back to our roots and we're at the healthiest we've ever been.
Yeah. So, and that's the types of thing that I'm talking about on like, we get in this where we are celebrating the very thing that's killing us. We're celebrating that cancer. We're doubling down. And when somebody wants to point that out as, hey, maybe that's bad. Similar to the reason why I love our format of the tension, and what I think, like, where I'm finding myself finding community with a lot of you that are listening, is because you feel the same way. I don't believe that full on individualism is the way to go. But every time I point that out, somebody goes, oh, well, so you're a socialist? Oh, well, you're just a this. And like, no, I don't think that's right either. There's a healthy middle. We cannot fall into that logical fallacy of black and white thinking. We have to go, okay, there is a default that says, I value the community. That is my default. Now I have to pace myself personally, and I have to make sure that I have put in, personal guardrails. I think to one of your points too is like, I spent a lot of time getting burnt out by the church as a volunteer and as a staff member. Does that mean that
I think,
go ahead.
I think we have to acknowledge in our culture today that some of this individualism has been driven by the distrust of the organization
Sure.
because of the organization taking advantage of this one another from the Bible
Yep.
and using it in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
And
Imagine
when
that
that
email
happens,
from your kids pastor, kids minister. Well, don't, depends. From your kids
Lori, if
director.
you're listening, I still think you should be called kids pastor. And if anyone else on staff is listening, I'm going to keep fighting to give you that title.
All right. So from your kids pastor, we'll just say that your kids pastor could send an email that says, hey, we have another service. We would love to be able to serve our new families really well. Can you stay for an extra one if it fits within your schedule? There's another one that's like leads with a scripture that tells us how God, expects us to deny ourselves and to follow Him, and so whatever you planned on doing, God wants you to serve in that third service. It's like there's a difference between that spiritual manipulation and providing an opportunity for people to serve. And I think like what I was about to say is like I've been
Yeah,
burnt
here,
out.
let me read the email because she did it the right way.
Okay, but I do
We
want
need
to
your
get to my
help.
point.
Okay, we need your help. We are thrilled to announce we'll have 3 services this Easter. To make this a success, we need 25 additional volunteers. If you don't currently serve on that Sunday, would you be willing to volunteer for one of the services? Please respond with your preferred service time. We're excited about the opportunity to serve together and see all that God's going to do through the extra service. We appreciate everything you do, and thank you again for what you do for our church.
Sounds very
We
pastoral.
truly couldn't do this without you.
That sounds very pastoral to me.
So there was no guilt there.
Right.
And so there might be some people listening to this who have been guilted. I don't want you to think my story was gaslit into trying to get volunteers. So
No.
I'm done with that caveat from Pastor Lori. Eric, go ahead with your point that I've interrupted 4
So
times.
my point
now.
is like here's what you don't do. Okay. You don't go, okay, I got burnt out by serving in the church and I got burnt out by, whatever. So I'm not going to serve the body of Christ, period. I'm not going to serve other people. Now, is it okay? I'm going to say it's okay. I'm going to say it's okay to be like, do I need to take a season away from, we've talked about this before, from the 501c3 church serving and serve my community in a different way? Sure. Right? Like, I think that's okay because like what I want to do is I want to keep that same heart of I care about the collective community. Why? Because of Christ. And so does that service look like me coaching our travel baseball team and assistant coaching on the little league team and perhaps coaching with the middle school team and offer? Sure. Does it look like the new neighbor just moved in and going over there and offering to help with? Yeah, like great. There are ways to serve outside of the church that for years I think the church has told me whether implicitly or explicitly, like are not
Those don't
as
count as
good
much.
as serving within the church. They'll be like, oh yeah, you do need to do your neighbor thing, but it's almost like the tithe thing. But your first fruits of serving should come to us. Your first 40 hours of volunteering come to the church, and then all the other volunteer hours you can spread somewhere else. But it's like, man, I look at families and I go, no, if you're out there and you're serving, and yes, sure, not to go back to the JD Vance thing, but maybe the most important thing you need to do right now is be a really damn good mother or father or grandfather or whatever to some kids that need you the most. I look at my wife. I look at your wife too. It's like they're serving kids. Sure, they get paid to do it, but they're serving
Nicole's
kids.
not kids. She's
Oh, sorry.
adults, but
Uh,
the point you made,
Families,
she's serving people.
people in
Yes.
need, right? They're serving people in
She
need.
has patients who have no family members. And so to be the loving, caring person who sits in a room for 10 more minutes when she has a crap ton of work to do, but because she's the only caring person that person's going to talk to today while they go through cancer treatment,
Yep.
she knows the importance of that. It's why
Yep.
she won a freaking worldwide award, and I'm amazed by her every day.
And she deserves to be celebrated for that. I mean, think about it. Like, look, imagine she says, hey, I'm picking up a shift on Easter. That's a bummer.
Okay, cool.
But at the same time, it's like, and Easter maybe not, but like Christmas or Thanksgiving or something else like that. It's like, oh, you're sharing, you become a surrogate family to the people that don't get to go home for that, holiday or whatever. I think about my sister-in-law. She was, lives in battleground state for the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. And she's a nurse and she had to work on the big game day. And it's like, what, where would she rather be? She'd rather be at home with her family, and their biggest holiday of the year is that game. But she's in there serving patients, watching the game with them, doing all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, yeah, that's service. And so if at the end of the day, Nicole or Abby, my wife, if they don't have a lot of margin left over to volunteer, I think I'm like, okay, cool. Do I feel like I'm serving the community as a business coach, as a marketing guy? Yes, I do, but not to the same level as a cancer nurse, not to the
or a
same
middle
level
school teacher.
as a middle school teacher, right? Like, I'm serving people.
We have an hour in our day to record episodes like this.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. Yeah, we're going to be okay if we have to, use our service elsewhere. So, but again, is that something where it's like, okay, my service to my family is, and you and I have talked about this all the time, like honestly, at 3:00 Mountain Time, I shut down. I don't take any, I'm done, because my job is to take care of those kids. And at any time, and it's happened before on podcasts, if I get a call or a text message from the school that says my special needs son needs somebody right now, I've been like, hey, Jonathan, I got to let you go. You know what I mean? And
well, 2 weeks ago, we were supposed to record, and Nicole was going on a field trip with our oldest daughter that day. She woke up and had a fever. And so it's like, hey, Eric, I'm going on the field trip today.
Right. Yep.
We'll bounce back later.
Yep.
Like, I cleared my schedule that day, and I was chaperoning 4 fourth grade girls around the science center.
Yep. So who's the real hero here? Yeah. Hey, remember that, Nicole. Just remember that. I know she's not going to listen to it, so she won't care. But, who really deserves the award? That's all I'm saying.
But like that yes, I serve my family.
Yep.
But I also, like, this coming Monday, we're having photo night for the baseball team at the high school, because I give them free graphic design, and I make game day graphics for the players, and so that these guys, who most of them will never play baseball again after high school,
right,
they can have a great experience. And so we're bringing a photographer in to get a bunch of photos, and that's going to be Monday night at 5:30. So I checked with Nicole and said, hey, do you mind if I miss dinner on Monday night so I can go be with that team, because the coach has asked me to be there, and I can serve my community in that way, and serve a group of 16 to 18-year-old guys in a way that maybe they won't remember it. But I also had a conversation about Jesus with the star pitcher 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
So it's like, yes, my family comes first, but it's also not at the detriment of everyone else. Like,
and to that point,
we put the oxygen mask on, we take care of the family so that we can have the ability to go serve others as well.
Right. And think about this too. Like, when you were in junior high and high school, and maybe not you personally, but think about, like, in general, for the most part, your parents are the dumbest people in the world. Right?
Correct.
Like, when you get to junior high and high school, for some reason, they become the dumbest people in the world. You need coaches. You need other adults that you could go to. So for a kid to talk to you, Jonathan Carone, at a baseball game, yeah, they might have a great relationship with their parents. But think about how many interactions you've had with a coach, with a parent, with some other adult that took interest in you. That was like, man, they may say the exact same things as your parents. But, like, I know as a parent of a 12 and 13-year-old, that conversation you just had, I'm praying to God that my son has those same conversations with other adults, because it's like, I desperately need, that's where this rugged individualism, self-made man thing tears down. Yes, as much as the, like, far right-wing, ultra-conservative Christian group says, oh, you need to be, the head of your household and blah, 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 that's your first, yeah, great. You've obviously never had an adolescent, or your adult children hate you. But it's like, I need to have
the average kid needs 5 trustworthy adults in their life to be successful as adults.
Right. So it's like, I need a collective.
And that's a secular
group.
stat. That's not even a faith-based stat. That's just, to be well-rounded adults, they need 5 trustworthy adults in their lives as kids.
Look at this practically.
And we can't do that when we're all worried about ourselves first and foremost.
When I'm worried about myself, either saying, I'm the only father figure that they can have. Yes, I'm the only dad they can have. I'm not the only father. I'm not the only male role model they can have. And case in point, just clip this out for your Healthy Sports podcast, right? When I'm coaching with another team, in fact, this happened multiple times over the season, me and the other dads with kids on the team, I'll look at them and I'll say, okay, if Oliver's melting down or if he's having a hard time or if I give you the signal, like, will you coach him? Right? In the same way as I had another coach that his kid is a pitcher and he doesn't do mound visits with his own kid. He sends me out there. And literally, there was one time where he's like, can you go and calm my kid the F down? And, because I can do that in a different way than dad can, right? That's different. As if you had dad walk out there. Now all of a sudden you've got a meltdown because of what happened over the homework thing. And
Well, you're
I've actually
trying
had other
so
coaches
hard
that are like, I'm going to take away your
impress dad.
Xbox if you don't get your together right now. And it's like, no, sorry, you don't get your stuff together right now. And it's like, that's not helpful. Anyway, to get to that point of like, that's why we, one, need other people, but two, we need to be that for other people as well. That's where that collectivism is necessary. And we can't be so egotistical to think that I'm the only one that can do X, Y, or Z. And so like, yes, I need other people, not only in my life for my own counsel, but I need other, like while we're on here, my wife just texted me and she said, are you okay if I go out for drinks with the girls after school? Yes. Why? Because she needs girlfriends.
Yes.
Yes, do it. Right? I can't be her only social outlet. It's not going to work.
So we're 51 minutes into this, and hopefully you get this idea. But like we've said in other episodes, we don't have a pretty close to this. There's no bow to tie on this. We are literally in the messy middle of this because there's no solution to fix this problem now. But my hope is that you will see this as an actual issue the way we do, and that you will ask yourself the question, like, are you looking for the way out, or are you looking the way to serve others? Do you have the oxygen mask on yourself? Are you taking care of yourself? And are you in a place that you can serve others as well and be a part of the collective community? Because I need your help. I need you to do this with me. And quite frankly, you need me too. So I need to be healthy on my own so that I can help you as well.
Yep. My encouragement would be, there's one other thing that you could do. And it's because cognitive dissonance is such a big thing in our lives, is like when you are approached with something like what J.D. Vance said, of like, oh no, actually,
which the Pope said was wrong, by the way.
Right? Yeah,
the Pope got involved.
Straight up,
the literal Pope, the one that lives in the Vatican, the one who leads the Catholic Church that J.D. Vance says he's a part of. That guy said he was wrong. Go ahead.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. Or the situation,
the freaking Pope,
or where there's certain bad faith actors that want to, like, I don't know what the official thing is, censure or whatever you're going to say to to the bishop who called for mercy. When those things come up, please, you need to attack them with the truth, or you need to push back on those. It doesn't mean you need to like do a whole diatribe on Facebook or anything else like that, but at least mentally, and this is actually true, how you fight cognitive dissonance is saying it out loud or writing it out somewhere where you're acknowledging, where somebody says, hey, actually loving your neighbor means loving yourself first, and then loving your family first. And then if you have time, you can love others. In that moment, you need to go, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right, because my neighbor, like Jesus said, is, first of all, everybody. But the example he used was the person I hate the most. Okay. So that's not true. In the same way where it's like, if somebody says, oh no, we shouldn't be calling for mercy for blah, 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 blah. Call that out. Call that out in your life. So that way this idea doesn't start to take root and start to plant in your life. So that way subconsciously, now all of a sudden, you're not treating people with mercy and justice, and you're not walking kindly. And then you're not treating other people like your neighbor, and you're starting to other them. And you're using words like radical leftists, or you're using words like, MAGA, whatever. Like, no, we need to be sober minded when we approach these things and understand that we need each other in this life.
That's it for this week.
Amen.
If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us on social. You can send those to @EricW712 on all the major platforms. I'm @Jonathan_Crone on them as well. You can email us at hello@tensionpodcast.com. If you got a story for our 100th episode, we've only got about 10 days for you to send those in. So send those to hello@tensionpodcast.com, or to me on Instagram as well.
If you disagree, let me know. Fight me. I'm ready.
Let's have the conversation. Let's keep going. We've had some really cool messages come in so far this season that I would love to have more of them to keep the conversation going, because we are right in the middle of these conversations.
Yep.
Next week, we're having another conversation, and it's an honest one. It's going to be probably the messiest we've had so far this year. If we're honest, there are some neighbors I'm really struggling to love right now. Yep.
Okay.
So if you want that episode, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube if you haven't already. If you like the show, please do us a favor and rate us and review us wherever you get podcasts. Share this episode with a friend if you found it interesting. As always, thanks for making us a part of your day, and we'll talk to you again next week. Have a great week, everybody.
See ya.